Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So we are continuing with Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 3. Krishna is the source of all incarnations. Text number 1. Sutta Uvacha Jagre Paurusham Rupam Bhagavan Mahad Adibihi Sambhutam Shodashakalam Adaloka Siskshaya. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sutta said, in the beginning of the creation, the Lord first expanded himself in the universal form of the Purusha incarnation and manifested all the ingredients for the material creation. And thus, at first, there was the creation of the 16 principles of material action. This was for the purpose of creating the material universes. Purport. The Bhagavad Gita states that the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, maintains these material universes by extending his plenary expansions. So, this Purusha form is the confirmation of the same principle. The original personality of Godhead Vasudeva, or Lord Krishna, who is famous as the son of King Vasudeva or King Nanda, is full with all opulences, all potencies, all fame, all beauty, all knowledge, and all renunciation. A part of his opulence is manifested as impersonal Brahman, and a part of his opulence is manifested as Paramatma. This Purusha feature of the same personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the original Paramatma manifestation of the Lord. There are 3 Purusha features in the material creation, and this form, who is known as the Karanodakshai Vishnu, is the first of the 3. The others are known as the Garbhodakshai Vishnu and the Kshirodakshai Vishnu, which we shall know one after another. The innumerable universes are generated from the skin holes of this Karanodakshai Vishnu, and in each of the universes, the Lord enters as Garbhodakshai Vishnu. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is also mentioned that the material world is created at certain intervals and then again destroyed. This creation and destruction is done by the supreme will because of the conditioned souls or the Nitya Baddha living beings. The Nitya Baddha or the eternally conditioned souls have the sense of individuality or ahankar, which dictates to them sense enjoyment, which they are unable to have constitutionally. The Lord is the only enjoyer, and all others are enjoyed. The living beings are predominated enjoyers, but the eternally conditioned souls, forgetful of this constitutional position, have strong aspirations to enjoy. The chance to enjoy matter is given to the conditioned souls in the material world, and side by side they are given the chance to understand their real constitutional position. Those fortunate living entities who catch the truth and surrender unto the lotus feet of Vasudeva after many, many births in the material world join the eternally liberated souls and thus are allowed to enter into the kingdom of God. After this, such fortunate living entities need not come again within the occasional material creation. But those who cannot catch the constitutional truth are again merged into the Mahat Tattva at the time of the annihilation of the material creation. When the creation is again set up, this Mahat Tattva is again let loose. This Mahat Tattva contains all the ingredients of the material manifestations, including the conditioned souls. Excuse me. Primarily, this Mahatattva is divided into 16 parts, namely the 5 gross material elements and the 11 working instruments or senses. It is like the cloud in the clear sky. In the spiritual sky, the effulgence of Brahman is spread all around, and the whole system is dazzling in spiritual light. The Mahatattva is assembled in some corner of the vast, unlimited spiritual sky, and the part which is thus covered by the Mahatattva is called the material sky. This part of the spiritual sky called the Mahatattva is only an insignificant portion of the whole spiritual sky. And within this Mahatattva, there are innumerable universes. All these universes are collectively produced by the Karanodakshai Vishnu, called also the Mahavishnu, who simply throws his glance to impregnate the material sky. Translation once again. Sutta said, in the beginning of the creation, the Lord first expanded himself in the universal form of the Purusha incarnation and manifested all the ingredients for the material creation. And thus, at first, there was the creation of the 16 principles of material action. This was for the purpose of creating the material universes. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hare Krishna to all of you. Thank you for joining. I know it's been a long time since we had our last session. So today we can see in this chapter 3, we'll do only till verse number 15 because it's very vast. The title of the chapter is about incarnations, and Krishna is the source of all incarnations. It gets a little technical, but it is nice to have this knowledge. Here we will be learning in this chapter about the creation of the universe, how the universes are manifested from Krishna. And we heard in Srila Prabhupada's purport a couple of times something called Mahat Tattva. You must have noticed that. So what is this Mahat Tattva? Prabhupada says that the total material energy is the Mahatattva. And Krishna, he enters first as the first Purusha as Mahavishnu, who's also known as Karanodakshai Vishnu. Now, from this purport also, we understood that there are many universes floating. So this Mahavishnu or Karanodakshai Vishnu, he is lying down on an ocean which is called Karana Ocean or Causal Ocean. All he has to do is just glance. Just when he glances, the Mahatattva is created, which means the total material energy is created. With his inhaling and exhaling, just by his taking in the breath and releasing it, there are some bubbles that come out. And these bubbles, they are manifested into different universes. We also learned that these universes come out from the pores of Mahavishnu's body. So the first Purusha is Mahavishnu. Now from Mahavishnu comes Garbhodakshai Vishnu. Now this Garbhodakshai Vishnu is the second Purusha. And from him, Srila Prabhupada explains that all the different living entities, demigods, and everyone else come out. Now, this Garbhodakshai Vishnu, he is lying down in an ocean, and that ocean is created by the perspiration of the Lord. Can you imagine? When we perspire, it's just a few drops here and there. But here, the whole ocean on which he's lying is his perspiration, and that water is called Garbhodakha. And that is why he's called Garbhodakshai Vishnu. Now, when this Garbhodakshai Vishnu is lying down, from his navel, a very beautiful lotus appears. So there is the stem, and then there is this beautiful lotus, and Brahma appears on that lotus flower. Now, the stem, it is described in this chapter that within this stem of this lotus flower are 14 planetary systems, 14 of them. And the topmost is Brahmaloka. And we know that even Brahmaloka is a material planet. It is not a spiritual planet. It is within the heavenly planets. It's the topmost heavenly planet, but it is still a material planet. Now, these 14 planetary systems, topmost is Brahmaloka, and in the middle is the earthly planet where we are. Now, when Lord Brahma appears on the lotus flower, he is given the responsibility to create. Now, he's a secondary creator. The first one is, of course, Krishna, but Krishna empowers Lord Brahma to be the engineer of the universe. And because he is, the engineer trying to create, it is said that he is in charge of the mode of passion. He is not in the mode of passion, but he is in charge of the mode of passion. And Lord Vishnu, he is in charge of the mode of goodness, and Lord Shiva is in charge of the mode of ignorance. Now, this Garbhodakshay Vishnu is very nicely glorified in the Vedas, and that is called, I'm sorry, the phone is ringing. Rukmani, I'm in a class, I'll call you back. So this Garbhodakshay Vishnu is glorified in the Vedas called Garbha Stuti. Now, plenary portion of this Garbhodakshay Vishnu is known as Kshirodakshay Vishnu. And this Kshirodakshay Vishnu is situated in everyone's heart as the super soul or Paramatma. So the Vishnu who is situated in our hearts is actually Kshirodakshay Vishnu. And the reason he is there within the heart is to guide us, to sanction our desires. Excuse me. Whatever desires we may have, he sanctions them based on our past karma. So we can see that now whatever incarnations will appear, they appear from this Kshirodakshay Vishnu. And this also happens only when Lord Krishna wills it. It is dependent on the will of Krishna. It is said, Advaitam Achyutam Anadi Anantarupam. Now Krishna, he is expanding in unlimited forms. And he is the source of all incarnations. We learn this even in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna tells Arjuna in chapter 10, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mataha sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante man buddha bhava. So he says everything emanates from me. Everything comes from Krishna. So now here it's important to understand the origin is Krishna, but here we see that so from Krishna, Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and Kshirodakshay Vishnu. Now from Kshirodakshay Vishnu is where all the incarnations will appear. So in this verse that we read, and even in the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about the position of Krishna. He is referred to as Bhagavan. Bhaga means opulences, and Van means the possessor of those opulences. Now we have many references from the scriptures that explain to us that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which means there is no one equal to him and there's no one above him. He is the Supreme. So in Brahma Samhita, we learned Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha, Anadir Adir Govinda, Sarva Karana Karam. He's the cause of all causes, and he's a Parama Ishvara, Parameshwara. He is above even the demigods. Now, Parashar Muni, he explains the opulences of Krishna. He says, who is supposed to be considered to be Bhagavan, possessor of opulences? So he says, Ashwarasya Samagrasya, which means in full. It cannot be, in the material world, we'll find some people are beautiful, but they are not wealthy, or they are not renounced, or they don't have knowledge, or whatever. But to have all the 6 opulences in full, that is beauty, wealth, fame, knowledge, renunciation, and power. So all these 6 opulences in full is only present in Krishna. And that is why he's considered the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Srimad Bhagavatam itself, it says, Eti chamsa kalapumsa, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna, you yourself are the Supreme Lord. So from these references, we can understand that Krishna is the Supreme Lord and he's the source of incarnations. He's also the source of all living entities. He's the source of the whole creation. So when these incarnations come from Kshirodakshay Vishnu, they are in different categories. Like incarnation is called avatar. So it could be Yuga avatar, Guna avatar, Manvantara avatar, Purusha avatar, Leela avatar, and Shaktavesha avatar. So these are different kinds of avatars. And as for Srimad Bhagavatam, these avatars, these incarnations are unlimited. There is no limit to that. They are just coming out unlimitedly. Now, in the purport, we also heard from Srila Prabhupada that there is, of course, creation and then there is destruction. Now, when does this happen? So there are 2 kinds. One is partial destruction and one is complete annihilation. Now, after 1 day of Brahma, there is a partial destruction. But at the end of Brahma's life, which is 100 years of Brahma, which is equal to 311 trillion 40 billion years of our earthly planet. So when that is completed, then there is complete annihilation. And why is that there? It is explained in the purport because of eternally conditioned souls like us. We are Nitya Badhas. There is this whole creation, only the quarter of this whole creation is material, but the remaining 3/4 is spiritual creation. So there are living entities like us who are in Maya, who are conditioned, and they need to be purified. Only when all living entities are purified and qualified to go back to the spiritual world, then there'll be no need for material world to be created. So all the universes, that come out from the pores of Mahavishnu, they are actually considered, they are created as being situated in the extensive body of Purusha. Now this Purusha, this Supreme Personality of Godhead, he has nothing to do with it. He has nothing to do with how many universes are coming out, all the living entities coming, going, nothing at all. Why? Because he's transcendental. He doesn't have a material body like we do. Now, if you remember, I don't know how many of you have watched Mahabharata. That Mahabharata, they show the universal form of the Supreme Lord, But that universal form, Srila Prabhupada says, it's for the beginners. Devotees are not interested, in seeing that universal form where there are thousands of arms and legs and heads and tongues and eyes. It's like huge universal form. Devotees, they are only interested in the personal form of Krishna, which is the Shyamasundar form, the 2-handed with the flute. So all these incarnations that are coming out from Kshirodakshay Vishnu, they are all as powerful. It's not that we should think that, okay, as from Krishna comes Mahavishnu, the power reduces, then Garbhodakshay Vishnu, the power still reduces, then No, they are as powerful. We cannot see or we cannot actually meditate on it, think about it, contemplate on it. Why? Because we are not at that position where we have purified ourselves enough to really understand. But at least we can understand theoretically. Then by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, we will be able to actually have realization. Now, to see the universal form, if you remember in chapter 11 of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna wanted to see the universal form, but Krishna says, you cannot see it with your present eyes. I need to give you divine eyes, spiritual eyes. So also for us to really see Krishna, we need to have divine eyes. It's not possible to see with our material eyes. Why? Because we have cataract. We have, our vision is a little blurry because of cataract. Cataract is that curtain of Maya that is there within our eyes. So once that cataract is removed and the lens of devotion is put into our eyes, then we will have divine eyes like Arjuna had divine eyes to see the Supreme Lord's universal form. But of course, devotees are not interested in seeing the universal form. They are only wanting to see the Shama Sundar form. Now, to be able to have that lens of devotion in our eyes, to remove the cataract of Maya, pure devotional service is a must. Until and unless we perform pure devotional service, we will not be able to really come to the stage of realization. Training is required. And that is why there are so many teachers available. There are advanced devotees available who have taken on this knowledge, who are practicing it and distributing it to others. So when we get trained from advanced devotees, then we will come to a stage where Lord Brahma says, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadev Hridayeshu Vilokayanti. That once we have the ointment of love put into our eyes, then we will be able to see Govinda. You see? So here we can see that we talked a little bit about the Guna avatars, Lord Vishnu in charge of mode of goodness, Brahma in charge of mode of passion, and Lord Shiva in charge of mode of ignorance. So Lord Vishnu, of course, we know is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Lord Brahma, he is considered a Jiva Tattva. He is not on the same category as the Supreme Lord. Whereas Lord Shiva, he's in the marginal position. So we have Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, and then Lord Brahma. This is how it is. He is between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Jivas. We are in Jiva Tattvas. So Lord Brahma, of course, is considered to be the highest pious living entity because he's empowered by the Supreme Lord. He has been given the potency to create. Now, Lord Shiva, in this chapter, it is explained that Lord Shiva, he is a plenary portion of Krishna. But because he is in direct touch with Prakriti, material nature, he is not on the same transcendental position as the Supreme Lord Krishna. Now, I don't know how many of you have heard or read about Lord Brahma's life. Excuse me. Now, as I explained, Lord Brahma lives for 100 years, which is equal to 311 trillion, 40 billion years of our earthly planet. Now, in one day of Brahma, 14 Manus appear. So that means in 1 month, there are 420 Manus. Please don't fall asleep. I know it's a little technical, but it's nice to know. Now, in 1 year of Brahma, there are 5,040 Manus. So in the whole life of Brahma, which is 100 years, there is 504,000 Manus that appear. Now, in each universe, there is one Brahma. Now, as we understood, there are countless universes floating. So in each one of them, there is one Lord Brahma. Of course, this is good to hear as far as theory is concerned, but it's beyond our conception. 5,040 Manus in 1 year of Brahma. Brahma lives 311 trillion years. We only know, up to 100. Okay. Person in Kali Yuga lives probably average age is 100. That reminds me, I was giving a lecture and I was talking about the average age. This is what people say, that the average age in India is 80 years and average age in the US is 60 years. So someone in the audience she raised her hand and she said, how about at the age of 59, I move to India? Then I live for 80 years. Does it work like that? No. We all have an appointment with death. It doesn't matter where we are living. But you see how the mind calculates. Oh, if I live in the US, 60 years, but I want to live more. So let me move to India. No. So we see that all this knowledge that we are getting is beyond our conception because it's very technical. But at least we get the knowledge, we understand that Lord Krishna's creation is so vast. It seems millions of manus come out from one breath of the Purusha, just by breathing in and out. What happens when we breathe in and out? Someone may say, shh, go brush your teeth, you know. There's not very pleasant at all. That's our breath. Imagine when Lord Krishna was a baby and his brother Balram complained to Yashoda Maya that Krishna ate mud. Now Yashoda wants to see if there is mud inside his mouth. When he opened his mouth, excuse me. When he opened his mouth, Mother Yashoda saw the whole creation. She even saw herself inside the mouth of his own child. When we open our mouth, what do we see? We don't even want to talk about it. That is Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now when we are hearing about these incarnations, all the incarnations come out from Kshirodakshai Vishnu, and Prabhupada explains the empowered incarnations, the fountainhead is Garbhodakshai Vishnu. Now it is mentioned in this chapter that at the beginning of creation, there were 4 Kumaras. They are the sons of Lord Brahma, and of course celibate, and they performed a lot of austerities because their goal was to become self-realized. They are the sons of Brahma. But the problem was that they had only reached up to Brahman realization, which is impersonalism, where they did not believe in the form of the Lord. They only believed in the Brahma Jyoti and merging into the Brahma Jyoti. But as soon as they had the opportunity to smell the lotus leaf, the tulasi leaves that were at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, the moment they were able to smell that, they became personal devotees. They became fully self-realized just by smelling the tulasi that was offered at the lotus feet of Krishna. So first, they became qualified brahmanas. So brahmanas are not by birth. In Bhagavad Gita, we learned that the brahmanas, they are not considered by birth, only by guna, by their qualities can one become a brahmana. So, of course, there are 3 stages of realization. There is Brahman realization, which the 4 Kumaras were at that time. Then there is Paramatma realization, where the yogis, they meditate on the super soul within the heart, and that is the realization they have. That is Paramatma realization. But the topmost realization is Bhagavan, which means we realize who is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, the remaining part of the verses, which are there between 1 and 15, very nice description is given of different incarnations, starts explaining different incarnations, and first talks about Krishna incarnating as Varaha, a boar incarnation for the welfare of the earth. And what did he do? The demons, they had submerged the earthly planet down deep into the filthy matter. It's called the Pluto's region of filthy matter. And Varahadev, he went down there in that filthy area, and then on his tusk, he brought the earth up again back, and it was floating. Now as we can see, when we hear about these different incarnations, there's always a purpose behind each incarnation. It's not that Krishna incarnates just randomly whenever he feels like. No, there is a purpose behind. Like, for instance, when he came as Varaha Rupa, he was able to, the purpose was to bring the earth back into its position. Then he appeared as Narad Muni, a great sage. Now, it is said that Narad Muni, he is a Shaktya Vesha avatar, which means an empowered incarnation. So then, what was the purpose of Narad Muni coming? His only purpose is to spread Krishna consciousness, to propagate devotional service all over the universe. That is his only purpose. And he also guided, if you know, in the beginning of this Srimad Bhagavatam, we see that Narad Muni guides Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is his disciple. Now Vyasadeva is also an incarnation of Krishna. So Narad Muni guided Vyasadeva to write Srimad Bhagavatam just to glorify Krishna and his devotees. So it can be considered that Narad Muni is an expert physician who knows how to remove the disease of materialists in this world. Then he came as Nara Narayan, the sons of Dharma, and they performed severe austerities just to control the senses. Actually, that is the duty of human beings, to control the senses and perform austerity. What is the austerity we need to perform in this material world? And these austerities will help us in purification. The austerities, first of all, is the 4 regulative principles: no meat, eating fish, eggs, onion, garlic, no intoxication, tea, coffee, no illicit sex, and no gambling. These are the 4 regulative principles that each human being should follow. If we do not follow these 4 regulative principles, then we are not entitled to be called human beings. This is what Srimad Bhagavatam is saying. Then we are considered to be like animals, because animals do not have intelligence to really follow these 4 regulative principles. So then after Naranarayan, he came as Kapila Muni to teach Sankhya philosophy. And, you know, we haven't touched upon Sankhya philosophy much, but we can say Sankhya philosophy, it explains the analysis of material elements. You can say it's the sum total of 24 creative elements. So Sankhya philosophy is actually also called metaphysics. So those of you who are interested, you know, you can read more about Sankhya philosophy. So when Kapila Muni came, this is what he taught. Then he came as Dattatreya, the son of Atri and Anasuya. Of course, in the Puranas, we can find more details about Dattatreya, you know, the son of Atri and Anasuya. Now, I'm sure you all have heard about Anasuya. She was a very devoted wife, and she was a perfect devotee, and she worshipped Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh all together. And she worshipped them and prayed to them to please come combined as my son. That means she wanted all 3 of them together as her son. And that is how Dattatreya appeared. And he, of course, taught about spirit soul, what we've learned in the Bhagavad Gita. I am not this body, I am the spirit soul. Then the next incarnation was Yagna. Yagna means sacrifice. Yagna, who was the son of Ruchi and Akuti. And he came as an administrator. And of course, he was assisted by demigods. And it is mentioned that only those who have highly elevated, pious living beings, they are offered these administrative posts. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, we learned that the demigods, they are administrators. They are small controllers, like Indra for rain, Lakshmi for wealth, Saraswati for education, sun to give us sunshine, moon to give juice to all the veggies and fruits. So they are all administrators. And so these administrators have to be very highly elevated, pious living beings, not just ordinary. So when there is a scarcity of such pious living beings, then the Lord himself come as Brahma, he'll come as Indra. Indra is actually a post. So Krishna himself comes as Brahma and Indra and other positions if there are not any pious, highly elevated pious living beings available. Now, is everyone awake and listening, or it's too technical and too boring? And that's what Srimad Bhagavatam is. We first have to hear all these technical details, and then we'll come to the sweet nectar. Of course, this is also nectar. Then we'll come to sweet nectar of pastimes of Krishna and pastimes of his devotees. Now, during the period of Swayambhuva Manu, there was no one suitable to take the post of Indra. So the Lord, he came as Yagna and took on that position of Indra and he ruled. Then he came as King Rishabha, son of Nabhi and Meru Devi. And he came just to show us the path of perfection. He came to show us how to control our senses. He also came to teach us Varnashrama system. What is a Varnashrama system? There are Varnas, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and then there are ashramas like Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas to teach us that, so that, we can mold our lives in such a way that we can make it perfect. Now, one of the ashramas is Sannyas. Now, did you know there are 4 stages of Sannyas? Generally, we know, sannyas, there's just one. No, there are 4 stages. One is called Kutichaka, then Bahudaka, then Parivrajacharya, and then Paramahamsa. And of course, Paramahamsa is the highest stage. So Rishabdev, Lord Rishabh, he came to teach his sons. He had 100 sons. He came to teach them how to follow the path of perfection. He explained to them the importance of performing austerity, because when human beings perform austerity, they get spiritual happiness and they also get spiritual realization. So austerity is a must. And one of the forms of austerity is chanting 16 rounds every day. That is an austerity. It's not easy at all, especially as soon as we pick up our chanting beads to sit down and chant, the mind says, oh no, 2 hours. No, 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 no. I think you just chant 10 minutes and you should be fine. This is how the mind, tricks us not to chant 16 rounds. It's an austerity. Following 4 regulative principles, it's an austerity. Like today is the auspicious day of Ekadashi. Fasting on Ekadashi is an austerity. Not to eat grains and beans on this day because it's very, very, very sinful to eat grains on Ekadashi. So these are different kinds of austerities that we perform. And for that, we definitely need guidance, we need training, and above all, we also need knowledge. Only then we will be able to perform these austerities. Now, afterwards, after Rishabdev, then the Lord came as King Prithu. And the purpose of his coming was to cultivate the land, because during his rule, it is said that the earth was very beautiful, very attractive. But his father was very vicious and he created great havoc. And the Brahmanas, they prayed and they prayed to the Lord to please come down. And that's when the Lord came as Prithu Maharaj. And his duty was to be the perfect ruler, to take care of all the citizens. Of course, it is said that if there is negligence, then the person is removed from that post. But Prithu Maharaj, he excavated many produces from the earth, and all the citizens in his kingdom were very happy. That is the Lord coming just to be a perfect ruler. Then the Lord came as Matsya Avatar, which is a fish incarnation. And the reason was that there was complete devastation, like we talked about. There is annihilation, there's destruction, there's partial, and then there is complete. So there was this complete devastation because there was a change of Manu. So every time there's a change of Manu, one Manu's rain is over, then the next one comes, then there's complete devastation. And the whole world was deep in the water. And that's when the Supreme Lord appeared as a fish incarnation, Matsya, just to protect Vaivasvata Manu and kept him safe on the boat. So these are the few incarnations that we have covered up to verse number 15. Now, as I mentioned, that every incarnation has a purpose to fulfill. And Srila Prabhupada says, just by hearing about these incarnations, just by hearing about these wonderful pastimes, it helps one to get attracted to Krishna, to get more attracted to Krishna. Because, like for instance, if a girl is looking for a boy to get married to, if she hasn't met that boy yet, just by hearing about the boy, how handsome he is, how much he earns, where does he live, who's in his family, the girl starts getting interested in the boy just by hearing. So imagine hearing about these wonderful incarnations of the Lord. It helps us to get more attracted to Krishna. And not only that, it helps us to understand how powerful and how merciful is the Supreme Lord. Then the more we hear, then the more we will be able to make our faith more firm. So this is the purpose of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, that we get attracted. If we have not yet gotten attracted to Krishna, we get attracted to him. And if we are, then it helps us to also increase our attraction to the Supreme Lord. So this is where we end at verse number 15. So if anyone has any questions or comments, you're welcome.